Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so let's start
Aye.
formally our talk for today. So for those who are logging in, thank you very much for logging in. So without much ado, I leave it to Evelyn to start talking about what the signs are telling us in the coming month of September. Over to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, thank you, PC. Good morning, everyone. And today we are in the end of August, 31st of August. We'd like to wish everyone a happy Independence Day for the Malaysians that are logging in here. And we can see that I think last month, I shall do a recap on last month, but today's topic is on what will the September bring to us. The wind of change will still continue in September. Talk agenda will be a brief recap of last month's prediction, and then we shall look at the influence of the 5 elements energy again in September. And PC will present his part on the September geopolitical and financial situation to see whether it is correlated parallel to what the 5 elements energy is telling us. And then finally, we will sum up everything, okay, at the end of this talk. Disclaimer, as usual, we will say that the content is purely based on our study in global trend and also the 5 elements of the Chinese astrology, which you can use as a guideline in your investment decision. I will advise everyone to use it with caution and also be cautioned in your investment decision, especially in such volatile situation. And we will not give any stocks advice. Let's do a brief recap on what happens in August. I think for most of you that log in here would have agreed that the month August is a very exciting month with a lot of happenings, not only in economic, in financial, in geopolitical situations, but also a lot of, you can see that suddenly news that, somebody passed away or famous people, passed away in this month, been convicted for that one MDB corruption issues was also in August. Okay, so this is a very happening month. As I say that last month, the chart, the year pillar here, actually we are in water tiger year, and the month pillar is actually mountain and also monkey, which has matter hidden inside. So what you can see here is that the mountain or the earth is actually countering the year pillar, and also the monkey, the metal, is chopping into the wood. This is what we term as clashing energy. This is heaven and this is earth. Heaven and earth clash. So this means that it's going to be it is an exciting month. A lot of things happening. And the hexagram is dispersion, also denotes instability. Because here you can see, you break this into two. This is actually a water element. You can see the water here in between, like a bridge over the water, the two broken lines. And here is actually like a wind, like blowing on the water. So definitely it's an unstable month. And if this month will also set the future of the changes in the world in terms of the financial, economic, geopolitical, and even the climate change as well. Okay. What you can see here, one of the biggest happening is Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which also triggers a lot of events, the after event of her visit. From here, you can see the hexagram of dispersion, the wind here. That means the wind, the mouth is blowing to the water here, which I've already divided this into two. It's easier for you to see. And with this major event happening, that means it shows that there will be a lot of instability. In the future, I will do a YouTube video to also talk about whether this will turn into a war or not. If it will turn into a war, exactly the forecasting by when. Okay, so this is the wonders of Chinese metaphysics. It can actually do a lot of things if you really do an in-depth studies in it. Okay. We have the month September energy that is kicking in. Year period again is same, is still a water tiger, no change for the whole year until February 3rd of 2023. And this time, the month pillar, the energy changes already. Remember just now was a very big mountain with the monkey, means that earth and matter together. And for the September month, which will start on September 7, it will be earth, but this time the earth is agricultural soil. So at least it will not counter the water so much, but still countering. And the you, which actually has the main metal energy, is more of a small knife or penknife or jewelry or small metal, those shining metal, precious metal as well. So this is also still countering the wood, but it's not that bad. However, once the reset of the last month, the heaven and earth clash, it will not go already. It will be, the changes will continue, because that is the change is, the clashing is the triggering point of the change to the future. And I think if some of you have attended my earlier talks, also PC and my earlier talks, I have also talked about that we will be in the new eras, in the new period. Okay, that's why you can see all those instability coming in, and you can see that from the water itself means that potentially there could also be droughts coming in. The government policy is still unstable, being counter. That means there will still be government changing hands, and the reset. As I said, the reset, it will continue for a long time. One is started maybe for a few years. Let's look at also the hexagram for the month of September, because every month itself, there is a hexagram. So the hexagram will also, give you the words of wisdom on what to expect in the coming months. So for the month of September, we call it traveling. It's actually the mountain here, and with the sun. This one is actually a sun, a li guo. If you are familiar with Chinese, we have the trigrams, the 8 trigrams. So this is the li guo here, means that it's a sun. So it's traveling, that means wandering in a state of uncertainty. It's a good hexagram if in a personal reading, when you have this type of traveling hexagram, you will be constantly on the move. And also the fire comes in, that means the fire period already said that there will be also intense climate change here. Okay. I will hand this talk over to PC on his part to check that whether what are the forecasts that will happen in September. Is it related to the reading here as well? Let me just read. PC, over to you.
Okay, there's a lot of things that are happening all over the world, okay? But let's talk about the political changes coming in September and beyond. Now, we have the Europe skeptic parties, like the Five Star Party is expected to win in the coming Italian elections in September, while Warhawk Liz Truss will be UK's new PM. So the Five Star Party is already polling at the highest number, and it will likely merge with another party that will form the new government. Now, the Five Star Party is a EU skeptic party, which means that they lean towards being anti-EU. So, and some very interesting news that I read about from US political analyst Robert Barnes. He is saying that Biden's deteriorating condition, in fact, Biden's is now, his cognitive response is actually quite poor. You can see people making fun of him, okay, shaking hands to a person, you know, who is not there, okay. Then he often talk very repetitively. Now, these are all signs of dementia, okay. And I know because my father is also facing the same thing. So when their cognitive response is deteriorating and they talk about things that, you know, make less sense to normal people, then you know that, you know, they actually are suffering from some sort of dementia. So, and because of his deteriorating condition, and you know, his approval rating right now is even lower than Trump's, okay, and it could force the Democratic Party to replace him prior to the midterm elections. That was his estimation, but a lot depends on what will happen next. Now, of course, the other thing that happened is that Trump's battle for political survival amid the charges leveled against him, and it could break the US into two highly contentious camps, resulting in potential conflict. Now, Trump's actually have a very strong base of a few million followers who actually, some of them started to tweet revolution and things like that. So this is, and the worst thing is that US, you know, there are more than 100 over million people that are armed to the teeth because of their, you know, they allow gun ownership and such. So, and if let's say Trump is indicted, I think it will create a very, very huge conflict in the US. Some people are even worried that it might spark some sort of a civil war, okay? And the other thing is Europe will undergo political unrest as the cost of energy and inflation skyrocket. UK will have nationwide strike from September to October. And these strikes are actually essential services. And the strike have actually started in August. And if you go to YouTube, you can see that, you know, the city cleaners, they have now gone on strike, and London right now is littered with rubbish. Okay, stack, you know, on a, you know, into a mini rubbish dump at corners of the streets and so forth. So London has now become very stinky.
And no, not good time to visit London now or Europe.
Yeah. So and what is going next is that even the lawyers themselves, they are, you know, there's a lot of lawyers that are actually paid by the government to defend people who don't have money to pay for legal fees and all those. So even those lawyers, they are going on strike. Okay, then in October, even the NIH, the National Health NHA, I think NIH or NHA, the National Health Agency, they are going on strike as well. So can you imagine when you have railroad workers, post workers, you know, anything that's associated with government, okay, they are going on strike. So this will bring UK to a standstill, and UK economy can collapse very easily. And that is why Saxo Bank, in their report about a week or two ago, stated that, you know, UK risks returning to become a developing country from being a developed nation. So the other thing is that Olaf Scholz could also be removed from power. Now, the Green Party, which actually secured the majority of the elections here in Germany last year, they won on the record of saying that they would create a green economy, you know, and such. But because of the war in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia, Germany's energy costs have actually skyrocketed. Electricity costs have also skyrocketed, and Germany is actually the production heartland of Europe. It is an industrial powerhouse.
Yeah.
So if let's say the energy and electricity bill are skyrocketing, okay, what have they have to actually power the industry. So that's why even the Green Party right now, is already acknowledging they have to buy more coal, burn more coal in Europe to actually have electricity. And that is why we see the price of coal, oil, gas, all spiking together with uranium. And the most funny thing is that nuclear energy promises 24/7 clean energy. And there's friction right now in the German government because the Christian Democratic Party, previously Merkel's party, they hold the position as finance minister. So the finance minister say we need to restart the nuclear reactors to help Germany, face the challenges of runaway electricity costs. But the economic minister, who is from the Green Party, then say that, it makes no difference because nuclear energy only will help another 2%. So, it's so, I think it's very idiotic. If you can save 2%, why not? Okay. And you are actually creating clean energy rather than, burning more coal. Okay. And nuclear energy is something that you can actually ramp up the power if let's say the demand rises. Okay. So I think it made no sense that they still want to close the 3 nuclear plants that is destined to be closed, I think, in this month, September. Okay, so I think it really make no sense. And not only that, when they talk about inflation and all those, Greece is another government that say they will subsidize 94% of the electricity bill. Now, Greece is one of the most indebted country in the EU.
Yeah. Yes.
Their debt to GDP is more than 100%. They have been built out by the IMF, built up by the ECB,
Yes.
and right now they say because of the high electricity costs, they are going to subsidize 94%. You just create more inflation, okay, and then your country becomes even more indebted. And then the UK, okay, which is already, their debt to GDP is also very high. The UK is saying that, okay, we will subsidize £400 for the electricity bill. And this is, you can see that the whole European Union right now is disintegrating internally. Okay. And they think that as long as they punish Russia, then the people have to suffer with them. There's this article I read, okay, that the German government is telling its people, don't shower, just wipe your body with wet cloth, okay, because if you shower, you waste more water and you waste more electricity. And the worst thing is the Rhine River right now is having drought. Yeah, it's drying. Okay, so
water will be a very precious commodity in the next 20 years or so.
Yes, because it really, someone questioned the German government, okay, that are we punishing Russia? Then they say yes, we are punishing Russia. Then they say, then the question was asked, are we Germans or are we Russians? Because Germans themselves are feeling that they themselves are being punished. Okay, but and all this is with the aim of trying to bring Russia to its knees by all these sanctions. But Russia is already proving that
it will never happen.
It cannot happen. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at the cost of electricity in Europe, this is France's electricity price. Now, for a while, its price actually dropped, then it spiked up. Why? Because the nuclear reactors in France require a lot of water as a cooling process. And even the rivers in France are drying up. So they have to actually cut down their nuclear power generation. So that's why you see electricity in France, okay, suddenly spiking up here. Okay, it spiked up. Then Germany electricity, you see, it just keep on spiking up. and Italy electricity, and UK electricity. So this is actually showing that if electricity price continue to go up, the first and foremost, what government would do is they do not want the citizens to rise up. So what they do, they will pressure the industry to cut electricity consumption. So that means there's going to be deindustrialization. So if let's say there's going to be deindustrialization, what will happen? The GDP will collapse.
Yeah, they will move their factory to somewhere else that it's
Yeah.
more profitable for them, and then also
Yeah.
people will be jobless. That is the
Yes.
immediate effect.
Yes. Then after that, you will have more people that are going to be jobless as well. Okay. So geopolitical events. Okay. Now, US could ramp up Taiwan tension to instigate a conflict. War often results in public rallying behind the US president. And that is the reason why US is hard up for a war. Okay. And that's why it keep on instigating the Taiwan issue. Right now, yesterday, a report came out that they're going to sell 1.1 billion US dollars of weapons to Taiwan.
And stir lah.
Yeah. Okay. So the most ironic thing that is that Taiwan accept the weapons at a very high price. Now, the US throughout the Cold War of last era, they they built a lot of weapons. So even the weapons now that the US is selling to Ukraine, those are the 80s and 90s weapons. But they are selling, few times the price. So what will happen is that, okay, they sell to Ukraine few times the price, then the US would have that kind of money to manufacture more new weapons with the MIC, military industrial complex. So same thing with Taiwan. I saw a video when they talk about what do Taiwanese think about, China's. Then they say, some people say, what is there to fight? Our country is accepting 80s and 90s weapons against China's new generation weapons. So the thing is, the F-16 that the US sold to Taiwan, I think last year, those are the earlier versions of the F-16, which is the 90s version. Okay. So then the Taiwanese government actually accepted it and paid a very high price for it. So that's how the US get rid of its old stocks and then having the budget to buy new stocks. And this Ukraine crisis will never end because the US can continue to sell weapons, okay, to Europe. For example, in the Russia-Ukraine war, all US keep on pressuring the ex-Warsaw Pact, the ex-Soviet states to sell their donate their weapons to Ukraine, and then US say we will sell you our latest weapons. So what happened is that the military industrial complex keep on gaining more revenue, and that's why you see you see that the US is forever instigating war because US economy is very war-centered. Out of US 200 years plus history since it became independent, there were only 12 years that there was not even a single war. So US is a very war-like nation. So the other thing is that, and Russia would not want to end the war, okay? And Russia already indicate it will make its move to Odessa, resulting in Ukraine becoming a landlocked country. Okay, Ukraine will become a failed state, unable to pay the debt it owes to the US, UK, and EU. So now it has Ukraine has suddenly become a chess piece in which the collective West, US, UK, EU, are putting more and more money into Ukraine. But Russia is intentionally prolonging the whole war because the more money they put in, okay, the more they grind the Ukraine army, okay, and secure a much wider area, then once Ukraine failed, the collective West would have put in hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, which will never be recovered. So then, Russia by then would actually be able to create a landlocked Ukraine, and then the entire area of Odessa on the southern side would connect to Transnistria, which is near Moldova, and the whole land bridge would be united with majority of Russian-speaking people. So that is Russia's intention. Whatever you read from the mainstream media about Russia is facing a lot of casualty, Russia is losing and all those, it's actually a propaganda. Okay. If
and
Russia is losing,
and those are actually biased opinion, because most of the mass media in the world are the one is CNN, or this who control CNN. US control CNN, right?
Yes, they even control a lot of the news network is actually controlled by Rupert Murdoch in Australia as well. And they actually want to shape the narrative. So if let's say Russia is losing, how come right now Russia has taken 25% of Ukraine's land? The whole thing is that Russia intention is to create a hellhole, okay, for the collective West to keep on putting in their money, while because of their sanction, it's destroying them internally.
Actually, so Russia is playing strategy. They are playing war strategy, whereas all these people like Ukraine does not have any war strategy at all.
Actually, one of the key reasons why Russia entered into Ukraine was the report that Ukraine was amassing troops along the Donbas area to wipe off the entire Donbas area. And if let's say they were successful, the whole intention is to go into Russia. Because if you look at some of the, if you go to Google, you can see that the World Economic Forum, the WEF, actually have a plan to actually cut off Russia into about 10 countries or so, each with its own government. So they want to balkanize Russia because Russia is very rich in resources. So that is why Europe has no more resources. One way is to create the tension, okay, to have to force Russia into Ukraine due to the threat of war, and then sanction Russia so that the whole Russia economy and government would collapse. But the opposite right now is happening, because I think Russia has already been planning for this for many, many years. They are waiting for the time to act. Okay, and that time to act was when they actually get rid of themselves of all the US dollars of reserves. Okay, in 2020, I think in 2020 or in 2021, Russia had gotten rid of all its US reserve and converted most of it into gold. Okay, and although they anticipate that it could be sanctioned, but I think they did not anticipate that they will be taken out of the SWIFT. So when they took Russia out of the SWIFT, Europe actually holds about 230 billion of Russia's reserves, and out of the 630. So it's like 1/3 of the reserves is held in the Western nations. So that was what prompted Russia then to change its strategy play a bit, okay, so that in trying to free up just the Donbas area, it's now pushing towards Odessa, so that it will bleed the UK, EU, and US more, because they keep on pumping money in. So that itself, okay, would prolong the situation, allow Russia to keep on selling its oil and gas at very high prices, supported by the OPEC. And the most important thing is that it has the support of the OPEC. Of course, the OPEC would want, as Saudi Arabia, Russia is selling oil to Saudi Arabia for their own domestic consumption. Okay, at a discount or more. So what happened is that Saudi Arabia is selling their oil to Europe at an exorbitant price. Of course, the Saudi would want it. Okay, so that is how Russia, have changed, or rather have planned its strategy, with a lot of what ifs. If this happened, what next? So it's like an algorithm, okay, that they have planned out, So that is why it becomes very difficult for the, for the Western nations, EU right now, if they decide to negotiate with Russia, it would have signaled that Russia have won, and they became very, very stubborn, okay, do not want to negotiate, even though their economy is actually imploding. Now, the other thing is that another geopolitical event is that Israel and US will threaten airstrikes against Iran. So therefore, it is unlikely to have an Iran nuclear deal, although Europe is desperate to have one. Of course, Europe want to have the deal quickly. They need Iranian oil, but the US is not allowing that because of pressure from Israel. So that is why I think the JCPOA deal, despite all the hype, will unlikely to happen. And once it's announced that it won't happen, the price of oil will escalate again. So sometimes, a few months ago when the war started, I wrote in my Facebook page, was the US intention originally were to destroy Russia, or was it tailored to destroy Europe? Okay, and the euro as well, because next to the dollar reserve system, the US dollar reserve, the next highest one is actually the euro. So sometimes you have to think about it, whether the original intention was to destroy Europe and the euro, so that the US dollar will reign supreme. But I think, Russia and China and a host of other countries, they have another plan at hand. Okay, now the other thing is that a five-star party win in Italy will unravel the EU, because Italy is really facing high debt. Okay, but right now the ECB is bailing them out, but they do not want to have euro. I think they want to revert back to the lira. So that's why when they win, they will create a lot of storm in Europe. But because Italy is also the most indebted of all countries, okay, and when you look at it, you talk about the G7, Italy is also there, UK is also there, all these countries are actually, highly indebted, okay, and yet they call themselves the group of seven. So that's why if Italy, the five-star party wins, there's going to be a lot of political tension in Europe, and they might even signal that they may want to leave the EU. There's also going to be more tension between Kosovo and Serbia, triggering another NATO intervention. So right now there's a return of tension between Kosovo and Serbia. So Kosovo and Serbia were previously the Yugoslavia, where after the 1999 war, okay, it was split into several countries. So Yugoslavia used to be a very big country, but again, it was balkanized. So because the NATO project to balkanize Yugoslavia was a success, that was why their other plan was to balkanize Russia. But, right now is, the whole thing is upended because they never expected the kind of strategy that the Putin's government would actually employ. So another thing is that Xi's visit to Saudi Arabia could cement the latter's entry into BRICS Plus. Saudi Arabia has already indicated that they would like to join BRICS, but most importantly, Saudi Arabia would then agree to sell its oil to China in renminbi. So instead of the petrodollar, we right now have two challenging currency, the petro ruble and the petro renminbi. So that goes to show that Russia and China are pushing, against the petrodollar. I think one way to avoid a major conflict between the three nuclear superpowers, okay, is to avoid a nuclear war or even a conventional war where millions of people would die, okay, is to force the US dollar to collapse. And if let's say the US dollar collapse, there's no way that the military industrial complex could be financed. And that is why you see that even though provoked, China will still, try to keep its cool, do not want to act too irrationally. So that is why there's a lot of things that is happening right now, pushing towards a de-dollarization program. Now, there's also more integration between Russia, China, and North Korea. North Korea has committed 100,000 workers to rebuild the war-torn Donbas region in Ukraine. Now, this is in response to a restart of joint military exercise between US and South Korea and Japan's intention to move long-range missiles to its southern islands. So that is why China has reiterated that it will continue to help North Korea develop, and Russia has also indicated to North Korea it will help it develop as well, because having a nuclear-armed North Korea would actually counterbalance against Japan and South Korea. So that is why North Korea has become an important chess piece in such a way, and Japan's have always have very strong intention of supporting Taiwan, mainly because there are several millions of Japanese people in Taiwan. Now, this is actually, if you look back into history, you will also understand that after Second World War, several 100,000 of Japanese were actually stranded in Taiwan, and they were very afraid of repercussion from the Chinese people in Taiwan. So what happened was that most of them changed their Japanese name into Chinese name, and invariably, through a number of the financing, okay, from the CIA, they have started the DPP, okay, to move up into the ranks of the politics in the government. You can actually, if you want to go deeper into this, you can actually refer to a YouTube channel called The New Atlas, where actually Brian Belichick, okay, he highlighted the support, of all the so-called, it's similar like NED, okay, in Hong Kong, the so-called NED is actually backed by the CIA. So they set up all this to actually make counter operation against the government. So of course, another thing that's happening is the greater integration of the Eurasian landmass. So the Eurasian landmass is often viewed as the most singular important landmass that will dictate the global economy. Why? Because if we look at the Eurasian landmass itself, including India and China, and the Indonesia, okay, as well as the Central Asia and East and the Russia side, they have easily more than half of the global population. So that is why this is a very important landmass. If you have that kind of population, you will have the growth in the economy. And that is why throughout history, you can see that there's a lot of incursions, okay, trying to control the European landmass from Japan's involvement during World War II, trying to secure the eastern side of the landmass, through the British expansion into Asia, or even the Dutch. Okay, throughout history, in controlling the European landmass is very important. That is where the world's population is, and as long as the world population grows, there will be economic growth. And that another thing is that the Eurasian landmass have vast resources. So, but what will happen is that let's look at, in my expectation, not my expectation, in my opinion, there's two wild cards that will happen. Now, One could be the announcement of NATO's military deployment into Ukraine, because losing Ukraine will undermine NATO's legitimacy and international stature. If, let's say, NATO allow Ukraine to fail, then people will say, why do I need to join NATO? You know, because it's offered me no protection. So that is why I think if Russia secured Odessa and Ukraine become landlocked, that could be the triggering point. But of course, NATO right now is trying to instigate another incident, which is on the southern side of Russia, that is the Kosovo and Serbia conflict. Now, Serbia has very strong ties with Russia. Assuming that the NATO make a push into Serbia, would Russia actually support Serbia? Russia might, because if, let's say, you know, just as Russia is going to control, is going to, you know, secure a landmass to keep itself away from NATO. If, let's say, NATO create another conflict on the southern side, that could, you know, force Russia to react. And if, let's say, Russia react in a conflict in Serbia, that would give NATO the reason that, hey, you know, we're going to right now announce our deployment into Ukraine. So the saddest thing of all this is that Ukraine becomes the meat grinder, okay? That country will be completely and utterly destroyed. So another wild card is that because of high electricity costs and with potentially Olaf Scholz to be removed from power, then Germany might flip sides and allow Nord Stream 2 to operate, therefore saving the German economy. Because no matter what happens, Germany will look at its own interests first. If, let's say, Germany economy collapses, can you imagine what will happen to the entire industry of Germany? Right now in Europe, a lot of the high intensity those smelters which consume high electricity, you know, in the smelting of metals and such, all these have closed down, majority of them anyway, because the amount of electricity that is required to melt iron, you know, will put the company at a loss. So that's why you have smelters of zinc, smelters of copper, you know, shutting down. So when these things are shut down, what will happen? There will be lack of raw materials. Lack of more raw materials, what will happen? Inflation. So how do we stop inflation? The Fed alone cannot handle inflation because US is not the world production. It's not a world production powerhouse. China is. And if, let's say, the raw material goes up in price, then whatever that's produced, okay, in China will also cost more. So that is why, you know, that's why no matter what the Fed says, it will not be able to control the inflation that is going to be unleashed into the world. So the Fed is hiking into a recession, therefore exacerbating it into a recession much worse than the global financial crisis. And here I'm going to show you why. Now, this is the US broad money growth annualized on a quarterly basis. You can see that this is the current situation here. Okay, this is where we stand. Then look at the global financial crisis. This was where it was. Right now, the broad money supply is much lower than during the financial crisis. So what can we tell from that? It's going to definitely, it's going to be much worse because the entire economy of the world is mostly run on debt. Government create debt, spend on projects. Okay, in the US, they spend on the military industrial complex. Okay, then that is the debt that drives the economy. That is a result of creation of credit. When the supply of money comes down, means that credit is being withdrawn from the economy. What will happen? definitely the economy will crash. Okay. So even though when inflation was already running high in 2021, the Fed says that it is an inflation that is in transition. So then we have 2 quarters of negative growth. And what did the former Fed chairman, Janet Yellen, say? This is not a recession. This is a transition. So you see, they are trying to play that kind of wording just to boost up, okay, investors' confidence. But everything is already falling apart, okay? In my Facebook page, I actually have written about economic indicators that is showing why the US, every indicator is already screaming at recession is already here. So, and the Fed has not even started on an aggressive QT. Way back then, the Fed will say we will have QT on the first 3 months from January 1st at $47.5 billion a month. So August have already ended. By right, their QT should be 142.5 billion, but so far it's only 64 billion, way behind its target. Now in September, the QT is going to be 95 billion per month. So that means by the end of September, the Fed will have to reduce QT by about $237.5 billion. And if let's say, even though the Fed is able to increase its QT by the end of September to 100 billion, it is still more than 50% shortfall. But the Fed cannot reduce its QT too much, because why do I say that? If you look at the Fed reverse repo is actually pumping liquidity into the market. From less than 1 trillion in 2020, it has become more than 1 trillion in 2021, and right now it's become more than 2 trillion. So the Fed is also trying to maintain liquidity in the market through reverse repo, while telling the whole world we are going to reduce our balance sheet, our total assets through QT. So another thing, the ECB said that they are also going to have higher interest rate, and we are going to have QT starting from September. How can you start QT when the ECB itself is financing Italians' debt, buying back all the sovereign bond, because Italian bond yields have increased by 6 times from negative to positive. So if they add another 50 basis point or 75 basis point, the Italian debt will actually collapse, which means they have to buy it back. So how can you have QT when you are actually having QT in other countries, but having QE in other countries? That's why the ECB is actually in a bind. And all this would come to head, and the European Union is at risk of collapse. The euro is at risk of collapse. That's why, you know, euro to the US dollar now is below the parity of 1. So let's look at, you know, the consumer confidence. Europe will face economic depression due to runaway inflation in energy and collapse of its industries, as many will be forced to shut down. Social unrest will only deepen the economic crisis. So if you look at the France consumer confidence, okay, France is a bit better, but you look at Germany, it's actually negative here, negative 30, here is negative 40. France is still at about 80. Then you look at UK, which is negative 40 something. So when you have confidence that is in negative, it's really telling you, you know, people is like giving up on the economy already. So energy crisis will worsen in September, because as we move closer to the winter months, the situation will become much worse, and very desperate to have energy for the winter. So that's why it will worsen in September. Europe risks falling into a stagflationary depression, because the more demand it is, with Russia, you know, giving back little, there is going to be a crisis in Europe. So just now, Evelyn talked about, you know, August being a drought yeah, drought is not only affecting just food, but it's affecting vast sectors of the economy, because drought will result in food crisis and cause runaway food inflation. In fact, the corn harvest in US Midwest has fallen below expectation. Okay, drought has also resulted in limited hydroelectric power and nuclear power generation, which requires tremendous amount of water resource.
Yeah,
Heavy
to cool down.
industries, yeah. So heavy industries which depend on water in their processes will also be affected by the drought. Now, another funny thing is that, depending on how this drought will last, TSMC have actually started building, spent several $billion building a factory in Arizona to actually manufacture the wafer, okay, for semiconductor. And the water that is supposed to be used for that processes is from a lake in Arizona, which has now fallen to its record low in history.
Oh, this is going to get into trouble because a wafer fab, a lot of water is needed, and they need good quality water resources. That's why all those Japan, they have those semiconductor industries, they make semiconductor industries. They are located in remote village where the lakes I mean the water quality is the best. Even Korea, also Samsung in Suwon, Suyuan, is also they have good quality water.
Yeah. So what will happen to that project? Okay. And the other thing is that China right now is not exporting refined sand to Taiwan. Now I read that some of the better quality refined sand is actually used in the manufacturing of semiconductor. So then many industries in Europe and China's heartland relies on major rivers to transport goods. Drought has also brought many of these to a halt. Now this is the Yangtze River. Okay, I think some of you have, yeah. So some of you might have seen the YouTube that a statue that has been that has been covered by the Yangtze River water for more than 600 years finally revealed itself. Okay, and the funny thing is that in Arizona, I think it's the Lake Mead, where water has fallen so low that they have found people. Dead people, their bones inside barrels of drum, those drums or barrels, So it's actually quite interesting, because when we see the movie, what the mafia did last time was that they put the person into a barrel and then they put it with cement. Okay, then they throw it into the lake. So it's also true. Revealing that.
Yeah, it's true.
Precisely. It's being revealed.
Yeah, the Cantonese say 水落石出.
Yeah, so all these things is being revealed. Okay, and in the lake, they actually right now revealed, the lake has dried up. That they have revealed that during the Ming Dynasty, few hundred years back, they actually built a stone bridge across the lake. So these are the things that are revealing a lot of history. And one of the things is that there's also a thing called the hunger stones in Europe, where in the period of 1614, there was a famine, and the people engraved into the rock that this is the period that we experienced famine. And then right now, that inscription on the rock has now finally been revealed, because it says that if you see this,
then it's going to be a problem.
Yes, it's going to be famine. So that's why food inflation will continue to go up. Okay, and because food inflation is going up, energy inflation is going up, how can the Fed battle all this on a global scale? So conjunction of events is causing from energy crisis is going to moving towards high cost of raw materials, manufacturing, and increase in household expenses, because households in Germany are paying 8 times more in their electricity bill, okay, compared to 2020. UK is paying also about 10 times more, something like that. So drought would result in food inflation. shutdown in transportation and industries will result in goods inflation. Inflation will result in drop in productivity. Interest rate hikes will result in a drop in consumer and business confidence, resulting in drop in consumption and investment, which affects the GDP. So it becomes a vicious cycle when one event reinforces another. So that's why, like Evelyn said just now, it is an ever-changing dynamic, because in this sense, all these events are coming to head, and any effect on one is being reinforced by another. So it becomes a very vicious cycle that will continue and continue until it burns itself out. And that is where we are heading. So let's look at the financial events. Now, the strong US dollar is affecting emerging market economies. We have seen that in Malaysia, for 4.10, right now it's closer to 4.5, okay? And to many countries, it has become a burden, especially countries that borrow in US dollar and paying back in US dollar. So for example, when we look at our 1MDB, most of the, that loan was for, X number of years, but then it's borrowed at 3 point something. And then right now you're paying at 4 point something, okay? So that is creating unnecessary burden on an economy, because when the exchange rate, when the borrowing country currency falls against the US dollar, then it becomes a crisis. And this is also affecting a lot of the property players in China, because they borrow in US dollar. Right now they cannot service the debt. Okay, and that is why you see property prices in China are falling by about 30%. But to a certain extent, that is a crisis engineered by the government because of multiple reasons. First and foremost was because of the cost of starting a family, resulting in lower childbirth. So this takes precedence, over all else. And that is why you see that the Chinese government have created this crisis to bring down the property price. Okay, sometimes it might be good intention, but also it depends on how well that the government will manage it. So of course, when the property developers finance collapse, you see that a lot of projects is being withheld, is being withheld. So when they withheld the project from completion, you have the people who have bought the property refusing to pay the mortgage. So you see one thing leading to another. So that now becomes a problem. But I think the latest was that China has already announced a 2 trillion renminbi stimulus, to get local authorities, to get the right builders to complete the project so that they can continue to pay the mortgage. So a friend of mine mentioned that instead of using the same developers in China, they are approaching those in Hong Kong, which are very efficient and very cost conscious, because most of the property companies in Hong Kong are actually very profitable. They know how to manage their finances more solidly. So that's why this was told by me by a friend of mine. So that is why they are asking all the local authorities, allow them to borrow money, okay, to finance, to pay it off, so that it's helped to complete the project, and the people will then continue to pay their mortgage. So, but it depends on how to manage it. At the end, it will come back down to managing the economy. But of course, there are a lot of economies that have potential to enter into a sovereign debt crisis. First and foremost would be the same ones all through the years, okay? Argentina, Pakistan, Egypt, to name a few. And of course, we have Greece, Italy. So this would actually become a problem when more and more countries have the potential to default on their debt. So then the weak euro and yen will lead to even higher inflation, okay? especially in Euro and in Europe, okay, and in Japan. And the ECB and BOJ will be forced to react. So you can see how the US dollar versus the euro, okay, euro right now is worth, more than €1 right now need to buy $1, and the yen is closer to 140 yen. Now, a lot of people were saying that US dollar strong, US dollar strong. Actually, US dollar is not strong. US dollar is strong in inverted commas is because the measurement of the strength of the US dollar is via the dollar index or DXY. And the two major components of the DXY that is measured against is euro and yen. So because of the huge weakness in euro and yen, it caused to be perceived that the US dollar is strong. And because the US dollar is strong, therefore, a lot of speculators that is long US dollar would then short the commodities, especially the precious metals. So that is a perception strength. But because a lot of the fund managers, speculators, a lot of it is run on algorithm. So whenever they see US dollar spiking, they will actually, short sell all the commodities. But if we want to say that the strongest currency is actually the ruble. Ruble has appreciated, okay, from its lowest point immediately after the incursion into Ukraine. The Russia ruble fell as much as 150 rubles against the US dollar. Right now, it's trading at 50 something per US dollar. So the ruble is the strongest currency. And the renminbi, despite its up and downs, is trading within a range, okay, rather than falling against the US dollar very steeply. And a lot of speculators, therefore, are actually shorting gold and silver because they see it as high US dollar, poor for precious metals. So they are shorting it. But a lot of things are actually happening in the precious market, which I will explain afterwards. So more dollarization moving forward. Now, the sharp rise in US dollar will prompt many emerging economies to trade in local currencies. So I think if I recall, I read a recent article that said that even inter-ASEAN, okay, intra-ASEAN, they are also looking at trade, doing bilateral trade swaps, okay. Then a lot of other countries that are exposed to the US dollar are also doing likewise. For example, Turkey. Turkey's inflation is at more than 70%. So recently they have reached an agreement with Russia that they will use, instead of SWIFT, they will use Russia's called MIR, okay, swap facility. So even Turkey is seeing that, the damage that the strong US dollar has done to its economy. So more emerging market economies will move towards the local currencies, okay. Then there's also, just about a few weeks ago, the emergence of the MWS, or the Moscow World Standard, where the MWS will be fixing the pricing for precious metals similar to the LBMA, but in local currencies, not in US dollar, okay. So why do they want to not allow the LBMA to have monopoly? Actually, the LBMA is is a custodian of all of the gold that is held by the ETFs and by a lot of private investors and so forth. But the LBMA is also working hand in hand with the COMEX to suppress the price of gold and silver. So Russia and China actually distrusted the LBMA and COMEX, and that was why way back in the early 2000s, China set up the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So because they want to trade strictly for physical, but because the COMEX is used to suppress the price of gold to enhance the value of the US dollar, therefore Russia right now sees that our ruble is strong. Okay, we have a lot of resources. We might as well set the price with our other partners in Eurasia. And possibly it could involve China, because China has the world's largest gold reserve. Okay, not US. Okay, the 8,000 tons that is mentioned in the US, has never been audited for close to 60 or 70 years. Okay, so China and Russia are the world's top 2 gold producing countries, and some analysts put their total gold reserves at 42,000 tons, with China having 30,000 tons and Russia 12,000 tons. Now, if we track the Shanghai Gold Exchange, since 2008, 20,000 tons of gold has been redeemed from the Shanghai Gold Exchange to individuals as well as to corporates. So many are held within the banking system and in sovereign wealth funds, and not in the central bank reserves. So that is why all these are actually kept away from the prying eyes, okay, of the World Gold Council, okay, which only report what is the amount of gold that is held in the bank reserves, the central bank reserves. So because of this could shift the financial power from the west to the east. And I think, Evelyn, if I recall, you showed me previously the cycle 9, is it?
That's right, the period 9.
Yeah, the period 9, yeah, it will shift to the east.
Yes, that's right. The power will shift to the east, and the west. Okay, I wouldn't say that US will collapse entirely, because they are still a strong nation, but it's just that they will no longer be what they enjoy today, the status that they're enjoying today, that be the top nations in the world.
I think even if the US dollar collapses, in fact, I've seen some economists talk about the collapse of the US dollar. Some of them are actually in favor of it. Why? Because if the US dollar collapses, it will shift the manufacturing from the east back to the west.
Oh, okay.
Because the dollar is cheap, okay? So then that actually helps the US to actually recover its manufacturing progress, because money will be flowing in, because US dollar is cheap, so everyone will be investing in the US. So that is why some economists actually say it's good that the US dollar collapse, because it has been financed by that.
Okay, my opinion that it will not be so simple coming from manufacturing world, because dollar definitely is one of the factors why people move factories in and out of a nation, the money factors, but it's also the workers' mentality, willing to become a label in a manufacturing sectors or not. That type of mentality. Yes, China is different. They go up in the 80s at the turn of the century, because they have huge population, and their people are from more rural area at the time, and also they are willing to work towards powering the economy of the nation.
Yeah, I think it has to change the mentality. But if let's say the US dollar collapses, then I think everyone would have to work even harder. Otherwise, how to make ends meet? So actually, that's why some economists actually say that if the US can get itself out of the debt-based system, it will be good. Okay, but the US cannot right now because of its 800 military bases all around the world. Okay, needing just the Pentagon itself. Can you believe it? When Trump was fighting for the Pentagon to increase its budget, okay, from 700 billion, I think, to 770 billion. The most recently passed budget for Pentagon, because they say that high inflation is 892 billion. Can you imagine that?
Okay.
So 892, let's say 900, is 20% of the 4.5 trillion tax collected annually by the US government. So that's crazy, and that is why US need to continue to finance wars, okay, because the MIC is their biggest industry. So anyway, now the other thing is that the emergence of the gold for oil trade. Now, this is something that is recently been talked about more often, even though I first heard about it sometime in March and April, but I cannot come to a conclusion why and proof that this is actually being done until I read an article quite recently. So what happened is that countries needed to buy Russian oil in ruble, will have to first buy gold, then sell the gold to Russia, which will be converted to ruble at a negotiated price. Now, this is due to the absence of bilateral currency swap between Russia and the country that is buying the oil, okay, or that the buying currency is too weak, as what happened with Turkey. Okay, so Turkey recently, the World Gold Council actually reported that Turkey have actually sold some tons of gold, and I was thinking that, well, Turkey, have high inflation, they need to sell the gold to boost up their economy, but according to that report, it says that Turkey was actually buying oil from Russia at a negotiated price, okay, because with gold, they can actually get a better price than buying from the market. So that is why even when they want to do swaps, okay, Russia is also very selective. Like Russia is having currency swap with China, ruble to renminbi and vice versa. And but Russia is not having a currency swap with India with regards to oil. Okay, rather it was negotiated that India would have to buy UAE's dirham. Okay, that's their currency. Have to buy dirham, and then that dirham will be converted to ruble, and then only then India will get their oil. Also because the rupee has been falling quite drastically. And that's why I think Russia do not want to have a bilateral swap with regards to oil. But with others, I think there is some bilateral swap. Okay, so Russia is very selective. Now, the interesting thing is UAE, okay, has also its own gold exchange. So when we look at it, Saudi Arabia has announced plan to build a gold refinery, and Saudi Arabia is working towards having a bilateral swap, okay, or rather not bilateral swap, but maybe selling oil to China in renminbi. Nigeria and Indonesia want to start their own gold exchanges. UAE, as I mentioned, has already an existing gold exchange that is modeled after the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So right now, if you put the pieces together, you try to join them, can you see the tentacles of Russia and China reaching across the Eurasian landmass? Of course, Eurasia includes the Middle East, Iran, and such. So that is why Russia throughout the years have built a relationship with OPEC, because with OPEC, they can actually have a say in how to move the, to have a change to get rid of the petrodollar. And what we need to understand is that what have these countries in common? Okay, they are all oil producing countries. Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, UAE are OPEC members. Indonesia itself is a huge oil producer. So when all these countries are saying that we want to have our own gold exchange, which means eventually the physical gold, Indonesia is also one of the world's top, I think number 6 in gold production. So if let's say they have their own gold exchange, do you think they would bring their gold to the LBMA? No, they will use it to supply to the gold exchange.
Okay. Yes, yeah. Sorry, PC, to interrupt. I think these things, gold will definitely start to receive attention already from maybe September, October to November onwards, because it will definitely all this will start surfacing itself in terms of the elements. I can already see the syn metal coming. So means that the precious metal is going to get the attention.
Yeah, and also because of the Moscow world standard, they will actually set it. And right now they talk about it being the Eurasian nations. Most probably they also include China in fixing the price. Okay. What will happen then would be Russia also, Putin actually mentioned that there will be a BRICS reserve currency. So eventually what will happen is that the BRICS currency would be the reserve currency that will be backed by gold, and all the other nations then would actually have their national currencies benchmark against the BRICS reserve currency. That is what I think could likely happen.
The financial changes
yes,
are right.
Yes, and that would effectively bring down the amount of trade done, using the US dollar. So I think also details of the BRICS reserve currency will gradually be revealed in the coming months. So these are the kind of things that are already happening. When you sometimes when we look at certain situation, like in the price of metals, we see that going up and down. Sometimes it's very heartbreaking. For me, it's also heartbreaking because a huge portion of our portfolio is actually in gold and silver miners and all those. Although have a good 2021, but some of them have seen their share price collapse quite drastically as well. But the whole thing is that it's always about how the Fed want to maintain the US dollar. But as long as the US dollar countries continue to lose faith in the US dollar, that can only happen one thing to the US dollar. And that is when, the price of all these commodities will actually move up. When all commodities are measured in US dollar, is transacted in US dollar, imagine when the US dollar starts falling, all the price of commodities have to rise. And that is why, even though the commodities have corrected, you still have people from the major investment banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they are all still bullish. Do you know that JP Morgan has in its vaults a few 100 million ounces of silver? Now, if let's say they do not see a future in silver, why would JP Morgan has a few 100 ounces of silver? Okay, and also why I think gold is due for some revaluation is that if the European Union is at risk, the ECB is at risk of collapsing because of all those debt. Because when the price of debt collapse, that normally they are sovereign bonds, it will create higher yields, which means that the interest on that bond will actually go up. And therefore, more countries would be at risk of default. So one way, because the ECB bought all these bonds all through these years, that is their asset. If that asset collapses in price, that means that, the amount of euro that they printed, which is a liability, what we have will then be the liability will be more than the asset. And what we have then, ECB would have negative equity. So under a normal country that's fully in charge of its own central bank, refinancing the central bank becomes much easier because everything is within that country itself. But the ECB consists of finances, of willing countries to finance it. What will happen when all these countries' industry, German powerhouse industry, has also collapsed because of the energy, water, and food crisis? If let's say Germany is deindustrialized, what funds do they have actually to continue to finance the ECB? So the only asset that the collective nation hold that have any value would be their gold reserves. So one of the things then to refinance the ECB would be they revalue gold to a much, much higher value. And there are some signs that we could be heading towards that. because under the umbrella of all the central banks, we have the BIS, okay? So the Bank of International Settlement. All through the years, the BIS have always owned gold derivatives amounting to few hundred tons at any time. In the most recent report, the BIS has reduced their gold derivatives by almost 90%. And that remaining 10% would eventually be cleared in the coming weeks or months. So that means that the BIS is preparing for something. Otherwise, it wouldn't have held on to so many gold derivatives, because the gold derivatives are also a method used to actually control the price of gold. So when even the BIS itself is actually, trying to clear its derivatives, it goes to show that something is at hand in the horizon. And not only that, the bullion banks that runs the COMEX, previously they were net short of gold contracts by 200 over 1,000 of contracts, or on a paper loss of about 42 billion. Right now, they have reduced the amount of contract closer more than half. Their net short positions have been reduced by more than half. What is this telling you? Because they have been under instruction by the BIS to quickly dispose of all these derivatives. Mainly because I think there is something that is going to happen sometime in the near future. Okay, so that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, PC, for your detailed explanation. So here I would like to do a little bit of promotion on our YouTube channel. Both PC and I has a YouTube channel. So PC, he will be focused a lot on the global economic trend, and also the talk that we have on this monthly series of talk that will be in both channels as well. As for my channel, I will focus more on astrology. I even do some studies on Najib Razak's 1MDB trial from an astrologist perspective. And everything that we share here today is actually not to scare anyone, but it's just for you to be aware of the world situation. Sometimes the mainstream news might cover all these news that where we are heading to in terms of economy. When an economy is going into inflation or stagflation, actually this is where we will have a lot of opportunity. I think a lot of people will agree that a lot of millionaires are actually built or made during this type of time if you know how to play your cards correctly. So that's why when you have, this is just my personal advice, when you have gains in whatever in your investment, and the world is not very stable, maybe those gains that we see now in the stock market might not be sustainable as well. So PC, do you agree that those gains that we see in the stock markets, do you think it will be sustainable, it will continue to go up?
I think the recently, if I've shown anything, that what the stock market that went up from July to August have been more of a bear market rally. Right now, this week itself, from above 4,200 points. Yesterday, the S&P has dropped below 4,000 points. So that goes to show that there is a lot of uncertainties in the market. Okay, but the shining one, okay, like I've spoken a few times, in the last two sessions, is still the uranium, because uranium have actually outperformed the S&P. So why uranium? Because it is, like I say, one of the key things to solve the energy crisis in the world. Okay, and it's the only one that can provide 24/7 clean energy, beating even the wind energy as well as the solar energy. So because wind, when there's lesser wind, then the amount of power generation is much lower. And solar is affected by the weather. You cannot have it when the sun sets, okay? But nuclear power, you can actually have 24/7, 365, unless during period of maintenance. And right now, Japan has announced that not only will they revive their nuclear plants, they need to have 9 nuclear plants generating power by the winter months towards end of this year, and they are going to build another 17. Okay, so but there's not enough uranium in the world to even power the nuclear plants even up to 2025, because by 2025 there will be close to 50 more nuclear plants in the market.
Okay, yeah, this is in line with I already stated that, in period 9 of fire period, all those chemical energy will be very prominent, and uranium is actually one of the chemical energy source that we are looking into. It's not only chemical energies, but oil and gas and all this will still be very prominent. This is the tips, or this is something that, at least I can share with the viewers here, or those that have called in here today. Okay, and also I also have some promotion here for you all. If you are interested, I can have a free reading on your birth chart, because our birth energy, we carries all the 5 elements energy, and it will also give you a snapshots on yourself that, whether you are suitable for, because there's so many sectors investment, like energy, precious metal, all these things. So it will help you if you are more aligned to the elements, if you invest more into the elements that you are more different. Some people, they are more into, slow growth. Some people, they are more into a faster, trade. They can do trading. So all this actually can be seen from your birth energy charts as well. So I will give you a very short reading as a compliment for attending this session here. For those that are interested, I've already put the link in the in the chat box. You can go in and then click and fill in your details, and I will give you a very short 1-page report about yourself, about at least about which sector you are more suitable to be invest, whether it's a slow or fast, steady growth. Would you like to have this type of information? Can give me some feedback in the chat box that if you are interested, we shall do that. Okay, and if you have friends or family that are interested, you can also share with them as well, for just a very short, simple snapshot of yourself, of you, to understand better also. Okay, so next, I think let's do a summary here.
Yep.
Yeah. With you all attending these talks by both PC and I'm sure you will know that where we are heading to in terms of financial, economy, and also the geopolitical situation. And you will know that we are all in an unstable time. So unstable time, we do things that will align to the unstable times to in fact gain our ground, or to gain in our investment. I'm sure you have heard a lot of your friends are losing money right in the stock market. So don't be like, one of them. Okay, we need to know, we must have the knowledge. One of the rules of investments that we must have knowledge on what is going on in the world. After all, the stock market is actually very much correlated to the economy. It is one of the factors of that also. I think everyone would have agreed to this. Okay, so whatever short-term gains, maybe you can look into what to do with it now. Then the summary here will be, as I stated, the financial system will continue to change. It was set to a new standards. Then the government rules regulation is been challenged. Like government, like UK has already changed to a new government. Least stress is a women. So actually period 9 is also a women era. So you will see more and more women into the leadership. And then things are in a constant move now. We are in stable. We are not in a very. We are in a very volatile period now. So actually every time. Everything according to the Chinese metaphysics, I Ching is yi, is about changes, but this change will be more volatile compared to the normal times. Okay, so PC, over to you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we will have more clearer picture of what is going to happen with the emergence of the MWS and go for oil trade. So as I mentioned, more and more countries are applying to join BRICS simply because they want to get rid of themselves, their country's reliance on the US dollar, and more eager to trade within their local currencies because one of the deal that Iran has with Russia is that Russia would actually buy lira, okay, that for Turkey to trading in to have rubles, okay, then Russia would reciprocate by diversifying its reserve into lira. Right now, Russia has already shifted its reserves, okay, into also into the renminbi. Now, there's going to be changes in government. I think, one of the thing, if you have followed, those geopolitical analysts, I would suggest that you go to YouTube if you have time to listen to what Alex Christoforou would say, or Alexander Mercuries, as well as the New Atlas. These are the people that,
the key opinion leaders are KOL.
Yeah, they talk about all this because they are directly linked to government agencies, especially Brian from the New Atlas. He's a former Marine. He understands military strategy. He also did a lot of things that uncovered the NED infiltration into Southeast Asia and all over Asia through their NED funding, okay, especially in Hong Kong. So then also there's going to be civil unrest, and because people are very fed up with the government due to high electricity costs, and also very fed up with the food inflation. Yesterday I saw a video on Twitter. Teenagers rush into McDonald's, stole all their food, all rush in, grab the food, and then they left. So, in UK, all right, so we are going to see a lot of disobedience, even in the US. Even the political situation is changing. They have this emergence of the woke culture. Okay, some of you might have already seen it. Same-sex marriage lah, promoting gender acts lah, that a man can identify himself as a woman and then go into a woman's bathroom. Okay, so this kind of things is actually boggles the mind because of this woke culture in the US is actually destroying the country from within. Okay, so this woke culture is destroying the civility in the society.
Yeah.
Then in the UK, okay, we have a lot of strikes that is going to be planned in September and October, and it will bring the UK to its knees. Okay, then geopolitical tension as each other red lines are tested. Okay, especially in Taiwan. Right now, it's going to be in the Kosovo, Serbia area. So I think the EU is very, very desperate because if they continue to pump money and there's no results from Zelensky, then even the people would question. In fact, right now, people are questioning. If you go to some of the political Twitters in US, people are saying, our homelessness people, homelessness in US, is actually exploding. Why? Because right now, the number of delinquency in loan payments, in mortgage payments is again rising, okay? Because of inflation, people have to decide whether I should pay off my credit card debt, my housing loan, mortgage debt, or do I need to feed my family? Or do I need to, have the money to travel to work because of high energy costs? So, and in the US, a recent report shows that 1 in 6 households is actually behind in payment in their electricity bill. So this is a very, very big issue. So even the people are questioning, why is the government continue to support Ukraine with tens of billions of dollars while they that amount of money can actually put more food on the table for Americans.
Yeah,
So,
this is also a joke. I
yeah.
like Nancy Pelosi. She was from California.
Yeah.
And, California, there's a lot of people that are homeless today. Instead of, go and mind her own business in California, her own people, why should go to Taiwan and stir up all these things?
Yeah, and the funny thing is that the U.S. military spent 100 million to ensure that she landed in Taiwan safely, because that's the
100
amount of
million.
money. Yes, that's the amount of money that they wasted to ensure, they have an entire aircraft carrier
Accompanying her.
to accompany her.
The Air Force One, I believe that she's in Air Force One.
So it cost 100 million to bring her to Taiwan.
Ayo.
Okay. Then, so that's why, even Liz Truss, during one of the interview, saying that, she was questioned, would you pull the trigger on the nuclear bomb, on the button, to launch a nuclear missile? Then she said, yeah, I will do it. Instead of, and then the people cheered. Instead of asking her, what are you going to do to arrest the problem of inflation, of unemployment, and the disaster that is waiting for the UK in its economy? They ask, are you willing to pull the trigger? So it's, the society has gone so awkward in the Western nations simply because of everything that they do. They want to, they are so hinged on wanting to destroy Russia financially and economically. But right now they are seeing that it's being reversed. They do not know what to do. They just want to ramp it up even higher. So running out of sanctions, what they want to, what the EU is proposing now, not to issue visa to Russian. So it's like, they do not know how to act sensibly, because the only thing that can resolve all this is to ask Ukraine to come to peace. But I think right now cannot already, because it has gone too far. Okay. And Russia has really spelled out their intention is to unite with Transnistria. Okay. And that will create the whole land bridge across the eastern to the southern side, and Ukraine will become landlocked, ensuring that it will be unable to ever pay the hundreds of billions of dollars that is being pumped into the country, leaving most of the countries that supported Ukraine in a state of destitute. So there's no way back already, Then of course, on the other side of things, the dollarization will gather pace. Okay, West will continue to lose international stature as economic and financial conditions worsen. Because now one of the reasons why the West is so anti Russia and China is a few things. They always believe that their political system is the right one, okay, to run a country. But China is showing that their socialist system, okay, is also able to put the country to a number 2 economy. So when that is being challenged, that political belief
that
will
ideology
also be challenged.
Yeah, that's right.
So that is why it's become a battle of ideology. Then of course, Russia is, because of its, because Russia is turning the game around. That's why they hate Russia even more, because their whole intention eventually was to push Ukraine towards, at that time they were amassing army along the Donbas border, was to attack Donbas and then go into Russia. And because part of the plan was to balkanize Russia. So, right now the role is being reversed. Now the EU itself is collapsing. So that's why the more that this happens, the more desperate they will become. That's why I was saying that eventually NATO might want to pull the trigger, and that would be very bad for everyone, because we do not know to what extent it will lead to. Okay, so that's all I have. Any questions or any question you want to ask, you can put it in the chat box.
Yeah, Q&A time. Anyone has any questions?
So if there's no questions, then thank you all for joining our session. Later, we'll post it on our YouTube channel. So if you want to recap, you can always visit our YouTube channel. So thank you, Evelyn, for sharing a very good session with us. And thank you all who are logging in. Have a very pleasant Merdeka day. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye. Bye-bye.